All right, it's the Fit for Radio podcast. I'm your host, Drew Titeman, and in studio right now, I've got a good buddy of mine, one that goes way back. But before we get to him, got to say we are at the Stafford Hills Club, a beautiful little place in Tualatin, Oregon, not too far from my house, a place that I work out and am able to work at as well in these beautiful suites. Definitely my spot to get a little Zen time when my kids are at school. Marcus Bridges joins me right now, and anybody who knows him from my past knows that we spent a long time together on the radio. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing awesome, man. So happy to be here and just so happy to see you doing this because, you know, you and I have spent a lot of time on these microphones together. I think we both know that this is right where we belong. So I'm so stoked to see you get this thing off the ground and see where it goes for you, man.
Well, yeah, and it's definitely a process. I was just talking to you before we got started, like the amount of technical difficulties that I'm dealing with. And it's funny thing is they're different every day. So like I've got one that'll wreck me, so I go buy 30 new cords to like ensure that never happens again, and then something else wrecks me. And we've been having some storms here.
Yes.
So I woke up this morning, and so like I had a podcast yesterday, full disclosure, get fully wrecked by technical difficulties to the point where we're recording it again. You'll enjoy it when it comes your way. But I thought to myself, okay, I got another one coming up tomorrow. It's gonna be all the technical stuff's out of the way. It's gonna be great. And then I woke up this morning and I'm like, God, why is my phone not charging? And I just keep like jamming it on the charger and all these angles. And then finally I sit up, I'm like, cut charge. I'm like, oh great, I got a broken charger. That's how you start a morning. So I go back to bed and then I get up and I walk out and I'm like, why are none of the lights on? And then the charger, the lights, the power's out this morning. So I take a pitch black shower this morning and
those are fun. Those are fun.
Rally it up. Coffee machine doesn't work. Nothing's going. So right now I'm running on a piece of beef jerky, Marcus, and it's and some shoddy equipment. Funny thing is I've got all the right equipment. I've got all the things they tell you to buy, and it doesn't matter when the universe wants to kick you.
Thousands of dollars invested in my podcast studio, and I used to think it was just me. Another reason I'm really happy that you're getting into this is now I understand it's not just me. This must happen to everybody or everybody over a certain age. And I didn't fall under that age. I have no idea how to do any of it. Thank God for the internet, man, because it's a new problem every day like you're talking about, and I feel like it's shaping me as a human. I don't know. I'm getting a little bit more testy every single time something new goes wrong. So you'll have to keep me up to date on how your headspace is after you deal with this a few hundred more times.
I mean, and it's the little things. All I want is the audio to sound like standard audio coming in. I want it to sound like it sounds in my headphones right now.
Right.
And I want the video to upload. That's all. I mean, what happens between the margins on the show, that's all well and good. My failure as a performance, I can sleep on that. But when it's like, okay, done and dusted, and then you have to call your guest back and be like, any more availability to repeat exactly what you said and dig back into the depths of your emotions?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's something that I think a lot of people that don't understand or that don't do this for a living or as a hobby or whatever the case may be, you don't get the same thing twice. You never will. You and I have been doing this. You are 30 years into knowing you're never going to get the same conversation twice. And it always, at least to me, it always feels better the first time. And you're always trying to replicate what felt so good the second time. And so, yeah, I mean, as a podcaster, that is A1 for me, and the biggest frustrations that you can have is having to re-record something. And, you know, when we were live on the radio, that problem never really surfaced. It was like, okay, that one's gone. It's time to move on to the next one. But in podcasting, it's a bit different. And I'll tell you, man, there is a head-sized dent in the wall in my bedroom where I go in and I hide myself and I bang my head against the wall every time this stuff happens. The concussions are stacking up. The problems have not been fixed. So I don't know if it's helping, but I'm trying.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. And You're right, though, that it's so easy to just do it live and be done with it. I actually hated rehearsing anything. I hated having a conversation about a conversation beforehand.
Yep.
Notorious throughout my career to just say, like, shh, stop. Like, talk to me when we go live. And then because I want genuine reactions from you and from myself. And a lot of times, if I hear something and, like, something just comes to the froths to the top of the cup and I say it, if I say it to you again in 10 minutes, you now have to fake laugh at it because it's not a initial reaction. And I
Yep.
don't know if you actually like it or not. Like if I catch you off guard and you're like, "Oh, that's funny," then we can run with it. And I can say it one time. It's the same thing in my personal life. I do not want to run through things multiple times if
Yep.
I
Yep.
can.
It makes me wonder how many great conversations get lost in studios when people they're worried like that. It's the same instinct I have. Like, I don't want to talk to you about this 5 minutes before we go, even if we're not having the same conversation. I want to save every reaction and every emotion for what's actually on record. And it how many times did we shut each other up in our 10 years working together when
Mhm.
probably, I mean, we love talking to each other. You and I don't shut up. It doesn't matter whether the mics are on or they're off. We enjoy talking to each other. And I sometimes think, like, that probably cost us some good conversations that we never actually got to have because we never got to it while the mics were on. So interesting stuff. A little peek behind the scenes on the things that make us podcasters and radio professionals go bald.
Well,
You still got a
yeah.
great head of hair, man, but I've been working on the crop circle for like 15 years now.
Yeah,
So
and I blame it all on radio. You would have an absolute afro at this point if you hadn't had to deal with all the radio stuff. Now, that's what we should have done. Marcus and I, we worked together for a long time in Eugene, and for the last couple of years on the Donkey Show, we would go to lunch every day before we do the show. I say lunch. Marcus would get lunch, and I'd get like pieces of bacon and avocado. I, I've gotten better. The appetite is much better these days. But what we should have done is just sat in silence and not said a word for the entire ride, just for the sake of the program. But that's awkward to just stare out the window
oh,
like
we
an
would
old
have thought
couple.
we would have thought one another were sick and
Yeah.
like seriously sick, like not just like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm having an under the weather day. Like, what's wrong? We need to have a talk. So
Yeah.
yeah, a couple of talkers, man. We find ourselves in the right places. Put a microphone in front of us, and good things happen. At least I like to think so.
Yeah, and we had some great times on the radio. If you don't know Marcus, we go back all the way back to when he was in college and just after I was out of college, and I officiated his wedding. The bromance goes on and on. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here, and I'm sure we'll have you on a ton throughout time, all kinds of different topics. I'd love to break down college football, Blazers, stuff like that anytime. And we'll have bonus episodes and things like that along those lines. But I wanted to kind of like tell a story on here, and you're a good person for it because when I lived in Eugene with you, I didn't do what I'm about to talk about at all. But it kind of became like part of my identity and is a pretty crazy story. We had a guy on the show named Tommy Vu. He is the world record holder for push-ups in an hour, and burpees in an hour. All these different world records that he holds. He's done it on Good Morning America the whole day, whole thing. And I saw a news article about him, and on 3 days' notice, I decided I was going to try and break his push-up record. Which his record was 1,710 push-ups in an hour.
In an hour?
In an
In an
hour.
hour.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, I haven't done that many push-ups in the last decade.
Yeah, well, and most people haven't. It's kind of an obnoxious idea. But I thought to myself, and I immediately started thinking like the math on it, and I figured I could do it. Now, most people would say that's an insane idea to try. Now, when I did go for his record 3 days after I read the article, I went in with no hydration plan, no blood sugar plan, no plan. I just decided I was going to do 60 push-ups, get up onto my knees, do 40 push-ups, get up onto my knees, and just do that till I broke the record. That was the plan.
That was the plan. Best
was
laid
on,
plans.
yeah, plans are always great. I was on pace to break his record at the half-hour mark and still right at pace at 40 minutes. And
Wow.
then everything just broke down. Like my kidneys started to ache. My body was shaking uncontrollably. I was getting so hot that they were having to like rub my back down with wet towels. At one point, my kid, Lucy, she takes off running downstairs to go get me a smoothie because my blood sugar's peaking out so bad that I just can't even move. So I'd like sip the smoothie, and that would allow me to do 5 to 7 more push-ups. And what's crazy, Marcus, is you think that like the pain across your chest and in your vital organs that are failing you would be it. But what you don't think about is your knees are so jacked. And so I had a mat from the club, Stafford Hills Club was nice enough to put me up to do that. And then I had my old crack yoga mat that I've done push-ups on for years over the top of it. And I still deeply bruised my knees. I mean,
I'm
to the
sure.
point for weeks, if I wore jeans and I walked upstairs, I could feel every time the fabric hit my knee, it was like, ow, 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 for weeks.
Ew.
So yeah, the little things that you learn. But I did not break his record. The record was 1,710, and I did 1,394. So I almost got to 1,400.
That's still commendable, man.
Here's the brutal part, though. And I told Tommy this, that it annoyed me, that he broke the record a year ago, and somebody broke it back, and then he re-broke it. He broke the record the first time a year ago at 1,440 push-ups.
Oh, so they're adding on hundreds when they break the record.
Yeah, but if I'd done this a year ago, I would have been 46 away from the record.
You didn't ask me to do any math on here, so I'm glad you did that. But yeah, you'd have been right next to it, like just right there. So
it's insane.
When you talk to this guy, like, did he give you any idea? Because you said you went in with no plan, no blood sugar, no hydration. Had you cued into the fact that you probably would have needed something like that to beat him when you decided to try it the first time? Or was this just like, hey, I want to try it, I want to see how far I can go, and then you learned that you needed all the rest of that stuff?
So I basically went in blind and learned the hard way. After the fact, He told me that, because he just told me a few days ago the technique that he used with a metronome, and he was doing like 2 to 4 push-ups, take a break, tick, 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 2 to 4 push-ups, take a break. And so
really?
Whereas I was totally burning my body out. And so I had a whole cheer squad there. And at one point in the middle of it, one of them points out that I'm going to exhaustion. And so I'm pushing my body so hard that you would want to do that if you were just trying to get cut or like end a workout, like a burnout to go to the locker room, not to continue to do push-ups. So I should have never done the last handful on each set, like where you're, squeezing those last few out. I think that therein lies the problem there.
Well, and I know you well enough to say this, that was your plight going in for the entire time. That's you. That's your personality. Like, I'm going to get 5 more of these. I'm going to get them in. Mm-hmm. And hey, sometimes just a little bit of a breather. It sounds like I never would have guessed that he would have hit 1,700 some odd push-ups in an hour by just doing a couple or 4 at a time. Like that math doesn't make sense to me. But again, I'm so not familiar with how many seconds it takes to do a push-up. For me, it's probably way above average, let's be honest.
And he's sacrificing rest time, like whereas when you do 60, you can sit for a whole minute or 45 seconds, but just on repeat, it doesn't really work out. Now, 60-40 is like, that's my magic number. So let me take it back a little bit on why this was even something I attempted, whether it's 3 days notice or not. So in 2020, they closed down the gyms. I'll back it up even more. In 2018, when JoJo was just a baby, my second born, so I've got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 2-year-old. When my 8-year-old was just a 1-year-old, I took a look in the mirror and I was like, ugh, dude, getting doughy, super pasty, just feeling and looking old, right? And at the time, my contacts stopped, my eyes stopped accepting my contacts after 20 plus years. So I was wearing like Buddy Holly style glasses, like Christmas Story looking glasses. And, you
could have been moonlighting in a Weezer cover band, right?
Yeah, and that was the trend there in like 2017. People were doing that. But for me, I bought the glasses. I liked them. But then one day I looked in the mirror and I was like, this isn't even the same dude that I think I am, right? And so I started going to the gym. Amy had just had her second baby, which at the time we were like, okay, we're done having babies. So we're going to work our way back to center here. And that was her decision all on her own, and she wanted to do it too. So we got one of those memberships where you only needed one membership, but only one of you could be there at a time. So like I'd go, and then I'd come home and hang with the babe, and then she'd go. And so it was like $10 a month. It was crazy. And it wasn't the greatest gym, but it was all we needed as a couple of rookies. And all of a sudden, the pandemic happens. And once we get to 2020, and I've been going to the gym for a while, couple times a week. I've got a routine, but it's nothing crazy. But I'm also doing push-ups. I'm also doing 150 to 200 push-ups a day, which is pretty darn good. That's something I learned from my dad when I was a kid. And it's funny, the older they get, you're like, Dad, you remember when you told me this? And he's like, not really. But what he told me.
It's so significant. It was so significant for you, but it didn't matter to him.
And it's funny because I go, Dad, you remember you told me when I was a kid to do 20 push-ups a day every day of my life and things will work out. And he goes, I did? And I'm like, yeah, you did. Because like you did push-ups. He's like, I didn't do 20 push-ups every day though. And I'm like, well, why would you say that? And he's like, I don't know. I probably said it because I wanted you to do something. And so, because I was probably laying on a couch when he said it. But I took it to heart, and I always did 20 push-ups. Like, that was my thing, but 20 push-ups isn't going to change someone.
But there's something to be said here for accidental good parenting, right? I mean, you can relate now, right?
Exactly. Anytime I can get a win, even if I wasn't a part of, like, it wasn't the really what I was trying to get at, I'm just going to take those every day of the week. But he had told me that, and I continued that for a long time. And then kind of in that first workout phase, I was doing the push-ups because I could do them when I wasn't at the gym. And then the pandemic hit, and things got weird like super fast. And on that first week of the pandemic, what was it? 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's what it was. During the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, shouldn't that be on a shirt?
That's hilarious.
That is one of the funniest comments I have ever heard in my life. Yeah, we flattened the hell out of that.
I think the shirt should say 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then there should just be a circle underneath of it. Because 100%. That's what it felt like. Is it every 2 weeks we circled back to the top of that curve, and we're going to try it again. Yeah, dude, pandemonium. The whole country was falling apart. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's 100% on brand there. And it's funny because at the time, so I'm doing the radio show, and it's so long ago that it's actually not even the girl who's on the show currently. It's the girl before that is still on the show. It's that long. You're listening to the Fit for Radio podcast, brought to you by the Stafford Hills Club, a place where I work out and I work. And if you're looking for an experience above all else, they were voted the best health and wellness club in the Portland area. And it's for good reason. This place is nice. I can come here, unwind. They have an amazing kids club. My wife loves the classes. They've got spin class. They've got the Pilates, all the things. I see people dancing around in those studios all the time. I stick to the weight room and some of the exercise equipment. And of course, I love the sauna and the steam room. It really makes you feel good, gets you ready to take on the day. Or if you want to wrap it up that way, it all works out right here at the Stafford Hills Club. And if you need me, I'm here for you. Just send me a message and I will dial you in with half off the initiation fee here at Stafford Hills. Check out all the amenities at staffordhills.com. And on that first day that they closed the gym, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. All right, I'm going to sit on my ass and watch some TV. Then on the second day, I started like, I have this whole like, oh no, I'm FOMO going on that I'm going to lose whatever I've got. I'm going to be back to the doughy little guy that I was at the beginning of this. I need to do something. And so I started doing push-ups and I was like, okay, let's see how many push-ups I can do. And so at the time I was able to do sets of 75. And so I'd do 75 push-ups and then I'd, walk around and do some stuff. And then I'd do 75 push-ups and then just kind of go on and on from there. And on that very first day, I did 1,500 push-ups. And which
Wow.
I was like, okay, that was crazy. But I wasn't hurt because of the way that I had kind of broken it up over the day. And so I'll be honest, like I would do them in any time where I felt like it would be easy. Like, say you had watched some sports and you had a couple of beers. And so you felt like you were kind of like bionic, do a couple extra push-ups there. Or, if I always would get up in the morning and I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning every day and I'd go downstairs and I would pound out push-ups and I would do it. Back then I'd do it 75 at a time. I worked my way up to doing them 100 at a time in my late 30s there. But I have since backed off of that and it's more of back to that 60-40 idea that I took to the record-breaking attempt. I could do that as long as, because if you did 60, you rest for a minute, you did 40, then you get up, you go check your email or you make a cup of coffee or you're planning for the day. You go, brush your teeth and wash your face, do another 60-40. It sounds daunting until you start to break it all down, right? So I would break it down and I did 1,500 push-ups every day for a year. And when I got done with that year, I was talking to a buddy of mine and he's like, that's crazy. And he's a workout dude and he runs a charity that I've volunteered at for many years. And so he's just kind of like messing with me and is like, well, dude, take it up to 2,000. You can do 2,000 push-ups a day. And I'm like, no, I can't. But this is what would happen is like people would plant the seed of something like that. And what I started to learn was what I just did there subconsciously. No, I can't. That is what people have always said about my push-ups when I'm like, well, you could do that. No, I can't. It's the first thing that comes out of everyone's mouth. And I think it really comes back to self-preservation, right? Or just like a way to protect yourself. If I tell you I can't do it, then I'm not trying and it's fine. And I don't need anyone else to try and do a silly number of push-ups, but how fast you just regurgitate the no, not going to do it, is something that we all do. And so after I did that, I kind of thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do it. So fast forward, I do the 2,000 push-ups every day for a year. And then in the next year, I realized that I can actually do 2,500 push-ups every day if I do them in the morning before work. And then every time I go to my production studio, I do at least 50 push-ups, try and do a 60-40. So Marcus, I'm not joking with you. In the production room at iHeartMedia where I used to work, I did no short of 1 million push-ups in that room.
And you got paid for every one of them. That's another way to look
That's
at
right,
it,
I
right?
did.
That's a real good, because
now,
here's
granted,
something I was going to bring up when you're talking through this. The time commitment alone is what does it really, like, I don't have the motivation. I'll never be 2,000 push-up guy, but just the time that you've committed to this is mind-boggling for me. And I think that that's a real important part of the story, because being willing to do something like this kind of like what you're saying with the no, I can't. Like that is so many people's very first instinct. And
Mm-hmm.
I've done it 1,000 times myself. I've probably done it 10 times this morning before I even got on here with you. And
Yeah.
so I just, just pausing to recognize a couple of the places my brain goes here when you're talking your way through this story, dude. It's and honestly, we should tell everybody too that's listening. This is, you'd think because Drew and I are as good of friends and we're as close as we are and we've worked together so much, that this is a story that I'm familiar with. It's not. I'm hearing this all for the first time. I know some highlights, but I don't know the actual, the whole story here. So apologies for just cutting in to say like,
No.
Jesus Christ, man, great job. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, it actually makes sense on a couple levels. First of all, it's kind of something that I really kept to myself in general. Unless I stayed over at your house and you're asking why I was doing push-ups behind your couch or things like that, there are certain people I'd have to be like, okay, well, there's a reason why I'm doing this. Like, and it became
Right.
my thing. It became the thing that made me different from other people. And I know that doesn't necessarily matter, but it is good to be an individual, right? And not to just always be like, well, yeah, I do what they do, but I don't do it as good as they do it, because that's usually how it goes. If other people do what I do, other people do it better. But the one thing I was good at is push-ups, and I could do it without getting too sore to do it again. Now, you mentioned time commitment. Later on in the story, that becomes an issue because, I do have a family. And if I'm doing push-ups all morning, all day, and all night, there needs to be some time for other people. The good thing about a radio job is I was required to be in the seat in certain minutes of every hour, right? So if I leave the room, say I go to the bathroom, I just go on the way to the bathroom, stop by the production studio, do 60 push-ups, come out, go to the bathroom, walk back to the production studio, do 40 push-ups, walk back to the studio. You're only gone for 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. I mean, you haven't gotten through half a commercial break. You're back before anyone else even knows or cares that you're gone. Now, did they necessarily know that I was always doing that? No. But I also felt like it didn't matter because I need to get up to stretch my legs anyway. So I'm skipping part of the lap I would stretch my legs with and get my steps and just adding a couple of push-ups. That was the plan.
Right.
And so that allows me to get to 2,500 push-ups a day for a year, which was insane. And now when you start to break down these numbers, we're starting to get close to like monumental numbers. And it was that final year, I'm hosting that charity function again. And they always, at the end of the year, there would be a time where we would come together. And that same guy who talked me into upping the number, he said, do you know how close you are to 1 million push-ups in a year? And I'm like, no, I don't. And he's like, if you did, it was like 2,700 and something a day, you'd hit 1 million push-ups. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Wow.
But I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing it. And he's like, you should do it. It's 1 million push-ups. I mean, that's the thing to hang your hat on. And so I went home again and I was like, okay. I mean, I guess I could do it. It's only another 300. You're already doing a ton. You just add in a few more in the production room, and then you do a few after the show when you're uploading like the best of or the podcast. You just, while that loads, you have to sit and wait anyway. You got your chin buried in your neck on your phone anyway while you're waiting. So just do them then. So I do the other 300 there. And so we get to the end of the year. And it's, I believe this is now 2020, end of 2023. So 2023. I got to count them as like 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 2,800. So at the end of this year, I have been grinding, right? And I've got myself out in front. So what I would do is the requirement was always do the minimum amount, but do more if you can. And then you build yourself like a little cachet in case you got hurt or sick or whatever. And that's something to point out here, Marcus. Like, if I had a cold or the time that I broke my tailbone or all these other things that happen. I butchered my hand at one point. Like, you still had to do them. Like, you couldn't be like, because it's such a daunting number that if you take a day off, you're like, I got a cold, I'm just going to skip the 2,800. So you're doing 56 tomorrow? Like, that's insane.
Right?
Right? Like,
yeah,
and
you can't skip a day with this.
no, you're going to fall apart.
And which is why you're so well cut out for it and I'm not. Because yeah, if I mangled my hand, I'd be like, well, I'm not doing push-ups. No, I can't. Voice comes right back and it's like, hey, remember me? I'm here for a reason. Save your hand.
Scoot over.
Yeah.
It was
so this is blowing my mind because it's so far away from my realm of reality here, but I'm really enjoying it. So sorry, please continue.
Yeah. So we get down the rabbit hole this far, right? So we're in December. It's actually just a few days before Christmas, and there's a Steeler game on the television. You're listening to the Fit for Radio podcast, brought to you in part by the Stafford Hills Club, just voted, actually, the best health and wellness club in the Portland area, and you can see it right when you get here. They got that saltwater heated pool with the steam coming off it, all the great workout classes, and amazing staff. I mean, these people are so friendly. It's unbelievable. Rarely do you go to a club where they actually want to see you. And that's the way it is at Stafford Hills, also a community where you build friendships. I mean, I see people in here playing board games. Sometimes it's like, wow, you guys actually like each other. Stafford Hills, if you want to join, just hit me up. I'll get you dialed in with half off your initiation fee, and you will see it, and you'll believe it once you're here. StaffordHills.com. The day before this, I'm closing in on the push-ups, and I had a good friend in town. Grew up, went to middle school with him, went to high school with him, college roommate the entire time we were in college. On a brother level, my buddy Sam comes over, and he comes over to have dinner at my house. He's not married, and he lives in Austin, Texas. So he comes over, sees my girls. We cook a nice dinner. Amy's a great cook. We're hanging out. We have a couple of cold seltzers, and we're just kind of catching up. My girls are annoying the daylights out of this guy too, and but he loves it, right? Like, they're drawing pictures and throwing them on him, and playing hide and seek and throwing blankets on his head, and just, doing things that little girls do. They like you and they want you to hang out, and so he warms up to this, and he has a great old time. And the thing about the day is, Sam is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. And sometimes when you're brilliant, that plays in your favor. And he's a lawyer, and he has all these degrees, and he's not the kind of guy you want to argue with unless you're very good at arguing, because he will win. That type of a guy, right? He's also too smart for his own good. And we had a discussion over a couple of months about some decisions that he was making as a bachelor-ish type guy living in a high-rise in Austin, Texas, with all of the excitement and speed that life brings when you are single. So much, in fact, that I had said that I wanted him to be careful with substances and other things, that we're too old to be playing with fire, that the pharmaceutical world and things along those lines were not what they once were, and that, honestly, I told him the same thing I would tell my kids, and that is that if you don't know if something is something, then I would go on the side of caution and not put it in your mouth. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you tell somebody who is as smart as him, they believe they can outsmart the system, or that they have figured out, you're concerned rightly, but don't worry because I know enough to figure it out. And that's where being smart plays against you.
Works against you. Yeah, because you go, I'm smart enough that what he's worried about, I'm smart enough that won't happen to me. And I can think my way around that type of tragedy, right?
Exactly. And so with that, it's he finishes up dinner. we have a good time. And then he says that he wants to go out. It's the holidays. He wants to go out to the bars with some buddies. And I tell him, it's probably best you go hang out with your parents, but you do you. You're a grown man. He takes his pictures from the kids and he heads off down the street. And I don't think much of it. We finish up the night. I get up the next day. Football's on. You know me. I love watching football. Got some DraftKings going. The action's on the table. I always lose when I bet on the Steelers. Doing it anyway. Actually, on or against, they are kryptonite. Let's just lay it out there. If you're betting on the Steelers, kiss your dinner goodbye.
Yeah, it's Pittsburgh for you. Imagine going there and feeling like you won, right?
Yep. And so, but it's a magical day for me.
Possible.
It's a magical day for me at this moment because I'm about to hit the 1,000,000 push-ups. I'm going to do it a handful of days before Christmas. That means I'm going to go way over. I'm going to set a personal record that I'll be able to be proud of forever. And I'll never forget. I said to Amy, I go, Amy, and she's from upstairs, like, yeah, what? I'm like, I got 400 left, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to watch this Steeler game and I'm going to finish them after and we're going to punch that ticket. And she, from up top, she says, like a borderline, I'm proud of you moment, which is rare. So I'm soaking that in. And I go to watch the Steeler game and it's not 2 minutes later that I'm standing there, Marcus. And the weirdest thing happens. I'm looking at the Steeler game, and out of the corner of my eye, there's this big bay window at the front of my house that looks out at the street. And I look to the right, and I see like two figures standing in the road right out in front of my house. Like, there's no sidewalk on my street. So, like, they're standing in the street directly in front of my house. And I'm looking at them, and right then, these two guys, and they've got these high and tight haircuts, like almost like military style hair, like it's real cleaned up. And they got clipboards.
Mm-hmm.
And they turn and they look directly at me through the window and point in my direction. And I cannot describe enough for you to understand the feeling in my body when they pointed at me was just like I got sick. Like, I don't even know what happened. And I remember out loud, I just said, and this seems to be a theme with me, I just said, uh-oh. And Amy from upstairs just heard this uh-oh, and she said, what? And I go, that. And I point, and they just turn. These two guys, they had pointed at me, they turn, and they just start walking up to my house. And it's the weekend. It's not time for solicitors. This is strange. Mm-hmm. And I knew something was up, right? And I open the front door before they even get to me. And I'm like, can I help you? And they look at me and they ask if my name is Drew Tiedemann. And I say, yes. And then they say, are there any children in the house? And they pull out 2 badges. They're cops. And I had a feeling that they were something like that, because it was just not normal.
They had that look about them.
But when they said, are there children in the house? I just shuddered. And I looked at them dead in the face. And I'm like, yes. Just at a complete mercy of the court. Because I don't know what's going on. And they said,
right, you're just without a frame of reference at this point.
They go, well, where are they? I go, they're in the kitchen. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, Amy? And she brings the kids out and they're all standing there. And then they were like, oh, okay, can we come in? And I'm like, sure. And they come in and I close the door behind them and I go, what's this all about? And Amy, I look over at Amy and she moves the girls, starts to walk them into the kitchen. And the cop looks at me and he says, there's been a terrible accident. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, your friend Sam is dead. And
oh my God, dude.
I just fell back through this baby gate, not onto my back, but onto my butt on the stair. And I remember just thinking, no, like I just had him. He was just here like a second ago. Like I had him and I'd given him the speech and I knew what they were going to say before they said it, you know? And they said, does he have a history of illicit drug use? And I said, no, but I know what they meant. They didn't mean like heroin. They meant that he'd fallen victim to the dirty pills and the fentanyl and that it had found him. And, you know, when we grew up, you know, like pharmaceuticals were around and they were disgusting then and all of that, but they weren't as dangerous as they are now. You know, and people would pop a pill and wake up the next day and it wouldn't be that big a deal. And like, that's just not how life is anymore. And he knew that. He was smarter than that, but he was too smart to think it would be him. You know, he just figured he had a way around it or he had dosed it appropriately. And it's one of those things that it's hard for me to talk about because it devastated me, Marcus. So like while I'm sitting there, I've got my head in my hands, but they're asking me questions about where he's been and what he's done and who he was with. And I don't know those things, right? Because he came to my house for a very normal dinner with my kids, with my wife. I mean, we had a couple of normal drinks. Like I went to bed pretty sober, you know, but then he went out. And that's when all this stuff happened. And what had happened is he actually went home to his parents' house at the end of the night, laid down on the couch and went to sleep. And when they got up in the morning, they went to go wake him up and he was dead. His mom and dad in their home had to find him. His brother, his only brother, is there as well. And, you know, I would learn later that he actually came home with those drawings and, you know, he had some contentious moments with his parents around some of the decisions he was making, and that he was an independent person and didn't want to be told what to do. But on this night, he came back and he was warm and he was talking about my girls and how much fun he had had and it was how great it was to catch up. And they said that for a bit, it was just like it was old Sam hanging out with them. And now they wanted more than anything for him to stay there and to continue the night there. But of course, he got picked up and he went out. And the rest is writing on the wall. I mean, his parents still have those drawings, which means a lot to me. You know, they live down the street. I still check in on them. I bring her a hanging plant on Mother's Day, and I try and check in on them there because Sam was a big Duck fan. And this day is so crazy because it started off and I was so excited. I was so excited to hit my mark, you know, and then all of a sudden none of it mattered to me anymore. And those cops were there for a while and they were working through their list of things. And the only reason that they were at my house was because he was at my house. And I knew that his parents loved me and I loved them and that they knew I wasn't part of the problem, but still, like, I just had this sense of responsibility that he was there and that it'd be one thing if this happened in Austin and he was too far removed for me to do something, but like he was right there. And I beat myself up over that, you know, about why I couldn't get him to stay there or to not go out. And I know that part's not my fault, but when those cops finally left the house, you know, my kids were so young, I couldn't tell them what was going on. And Amy took them out back or away from me. But it was the wildest thing. I've never had this happen. I closed the door, and that Steeler game is still on in the background. And I closed the door, and I looked up at the game, like, okay, right your head, like, oh, this is a centering thing. Like, just look at the Steeler game. And I went from looking at the TV, dude, to the next thing I know, I'm having like an out-of-body experience. And I don't even remember getting there. I'm laying on the ground behind the couch. and I'm just like wailing this noise that, like, as I come to, it sounded like I was listening to somebody else, not me. So, like,
Mhm.
as I'm realizing it, I'm making this noise that I couldn't even mimic now. That's just like this releasing like a pain. It was like like an, just like an aching type of a thing going on. Um, and when they walked down the driveway and they were gone, I said to Amy, I go, I'm not breaking that record today. I'm not hitting that million push-ups today. This will not be the day that I remember as the day my biggest physical accomplishment that I've ever done, that I was very proud of and still am proud of, was not going to be tied to one of the worst days of my life. And the Fit for Radio podcast brought to you in part by the Stafford Hills Club. If you haven't been here, you're missing out. Voted the best health and wellness club in the Portland area, and you will see it once you show up here. Not only is the staff knowledgeable, but they're incredibly friendly. It's a nice, clean facility with all the amenities you could want, with the brand new weight room, all the cardio gear, lots of classes to choose from, and it's kind of a family. They're building a community here, stronger together, and it is so evident at Stafford Hills. Hit me up and I will dial you in with half off your initiation fee here at Stafford Hills, and just come hang out and you can change your life physically just like I have. And it puts the light back in my wife's eyes when she's able to drop our 2-year-old off at the kids club and go do a class or go do a workout and then come back, and it just makes you a better parent in the end. Check them out. Everything they have to offer at staffordhills.com. After he was gone, I mean, he had so many friends that my phone exploded, and everybody knew that he had been at my house, and everybody knew that we were best buds and like brothers. Like, him and I used to wrestle in the gravel in front of the fraternity house in college, like, get so mad at each other that everyone would just like watch us fight with each other because we were so close, and that I always held him to such a high level, and vice versa. And if he was acting a fool, I'd tell him, and vice versa, and then war, and then love, and after he passed away, that next day was the day before Christmas Eve, and I finished my push-ups then, and I actually was so just hell-bent on not feeling what I had been feeling for the last 24 hours that I did 5,400 push-ups that day. And I just went all day and just kept going and kept going. And every time I'd start to cry, I just went back to the mat. And it was wild. I had to text his mom because I needed to know they were okay. So, I sent her a big long message, and then, I didn't hear back for a day. And like, I just sat and stared at that message that I'd written, and you don't know if they love you or if they hate you or if they think you're part of the problem or the solution. And all you want to do is give them a hug. And I was very lucky in the fact that next day, one of my good friends growing up, who you've met, he called me up and he's like, you know what? Day after Christmas, just get in your car and drive up here. And he was in Whistler, Canada, and they had a house for the week. And he's like, don't worry about anything. Just put your family in a car and drive up here. And so that's what I did. We did Christmas, and Christmas was so hard because I still didn't tell the girls had dinner with Sam, and I never told him that he died.
Mm-hmm.
So they were talking about your buddy. When's your buddy Sam coming back? When's he coming back? And I'm just like, ugh. And so I drive after Christmas. On Christmas, my family has to watch me just try and buffalo through it. And I'm faking it till I make it as much as I can. But my energy day to day, and this, is pretty upbeat and it's pretty loud. And I'm always talking and I'm always involved. And it was just so hard. I just felt like I was underwater. And I've lost a lot of friends but I'd never lost one this close and this close proximity to the moment. Like, sadly, growing up where I did and going through what you go through where we come from, ODs are part of it. 3 of my best friends have all died from overdoses, but not at this age, not when we were supposed to be old enough to know better. And so, day after Christmas, I just get in the car and we drive to Whistler, and it was the wildest thing. It was, as I'm driving, I don't think I said a word for 2-3 hours at a time. Like I'd talk when it's time to go get some food or some gas, but we're driving up there, and it was the wildest thing. And I'm not the most spiritual guy, but it really felt like Sam was on that ride, because it was so eerie. We got up before dawn, and it was so eerie because the sun came up, but the clouds came down over the sun and blocked it so that there was a dark gray, almost black moon on the horizon that you could see because the sun had been blocked. And so it was daylight, but there was a dark moon that I rode next to for like an hour. And it just had this feel again, and I went up to Whistler, and we were able to kind of hide from the noise, and my phone, it was just like, I need answers, because people love this guy, and I didn't know what to tell him other than he's gone, and that there's nothing, I wasn't there, there's nothing I could do. And when it all gets said and done, to come full circle on it, I made it. I was asked by the family, because I'm a public speaker, to speak at the funeral. And so his brother put the thing together. Him and I co-emceed it, and I gave what I would consider the most important speech of my life. Like, I mean, you could ask me to speak at the White House, and I'd say that's going to have to be the second most important speech, because everyone was there, dude. Everyone that we knew growing up, and they were all heartbroken. And so, like, it was on me to, like, make them feel better and to bring some closure. And his mom was so strong, and his dad, my heart breaks for them both. But I feel like I did him justice with that speech. And then I took his ashes. They took part of his ashes to the coast, where it was his favorite. And then the rest of his ashes sit where they should be, at Autzen Stadium. When you cross the footbridge, heading towards the stadium, coming from the university side, you come over that little babbling brook, and there, if you look to your left, there's a bench that sits under a tree. And he's buried at the base of that tree and will be forever. And, last year was the first football season since then. And those Ducks made a run at it, and I really felt like we were going to win it all for Sam, and it sounds so juvenile, but like, Sam was such a free spirit that he was once kicked out of the dorms for throwing his 32-inch tube TV out of the 4th-story window. It broke, and so he threw it down into the loading bay and got immediately ejected. He's just a free spirit, he was what that happened, and so, like, the next day he had to move into the fraternity because he had nowhere to live. But it's that type of free spirit, it's like, we all went over to that tree, we said goodbye to Sam, and I turn around and I literally trip over a bag. I'm like, what is this bag? And it's a bag of fireball shots, like a giant bag of them. And, like, at this point, I'm not even, hard booze isn't even on my mind, but I felt like the universe for Sam was like, are you guys not going to cheers him at the tree? And this bag of random alcohol had just been left there. And so a bunch of us, against our better judgment with the fireball, all cheersed him one last time and said goodbye to Sam. But I decided to bury him there because I wanted to sneak him in, which is illegal, and bury him inside. But my thought was this, that I wanted to be able to visit and have anyone visit whenever you want and not have to buy a $100 ticket to do so. And I also didn't want him to be the victim of a
Mhm.
remodel. And as long as he's out there by
Yeah.
that tree's going to be there. That spot's going to be there. And we go, and when we come back and see you when you guys are tailgating and other old friends, I always go stop by. I see Sammy. A lot of times we'll put like a little trinket down there that I'm sure somebody jacks it immediately, but just a reminder. And I don't mean to get so sad about things, but it's one of those things that like that year and that day will always be intertwined. And even though I said I'm not going to finish the push-ups today, I'm going to do it tomorrow, it'll always be 400 left. And when those guys get to my house. And for them to have to deliver that news, that must have sucked too. Because they're detectives. It's their job to investigate a crime. And so when they're asking if there's a child in the house, they
Mhm.
don't know me. They don't know if I might have a decent house and a beautiful family, but maybe behind the scenes I'm a shade ball. I get all that. But like when they're in the living room and they come to the realization that they just told the guy's best friend that he's dead, I don't envy that job one bit. And I am almost certain they heard me wailing as they got into their car. Because I don't know the timeline. I know the door closed. I know I turned to face the TV and then I come out of it in a heap. And so for,
Mhm.
my thought process there is just that, we all go through crazy stuff like that. And for me, I just think it's something that it's important to know that time heals so much. Because outside of this conversation, I've only told this story 2 times publicly. One at his funeral and the other at a charity event for a thing called TP Forever, which I'm the MC for, which is all about a charity for families who've lost a loved one, where it was all pretty spot on for the situation. And being the host of the TP Forever events, it's not lost on me that I'm not alone and that this stuff happens every day. And whether it's a bad decision with drugs or a car accident or fast moving cancer, it taught me to live a little bit more, especially with my friends and my family, to live in the moment. Like Marcus, you're very good about getting together
Yeah.
with your buddies and having a schedule for that. And, I look up sometimes and I'm like, I have failed to reach out to so many people that I care about. Now, I'm lucky in the fact that there are so many people that I care about and that care about me, but I just like I try and tell myself like you got to get better at connecting with these people and with making memories and savoring memories before it's too late. You know?
Yeah, it's a really good point, dude. And I the reason and thank you for telling me that I'm good at it because I don't feel like I'm good at getting together with my friends. I feel sometimes that I'm too forceful with it. I feel like again, people have kids, they have lives. I don't. So sometimes it's like I've got free time and they don't. But probably about COVID actually is when I really started focusing on this. If I have that thought, man, I got to get better. I pick up the phone and call one of them. And that made me better in that minute. And but that notwithstanding, there's something else that you talked about in your story that I think is so valuable to the human experience that I have to touch on it because it's something that I dealt with a little bit when my wife's father died before we were ever married. And you mentioned it, fast moving cancer. It was 3 months from diagnosis to death. There was no time to process any of it. And my role was to be there to be her rock. I'm standing beneath her this whole time. I have to be there for her and I have to be strong. Every time I left Newport to come back to Eugene to do the radio show, I would stop in the very first pullout of Highway 20 right outside of Newport, the one that everybody knows, and I would call my mom and I would cry for 30 minutes straight. Just absolutely wail, a lot like you, sounds that I never heard myself make. And after that, what I realized was that compartmentalization was the most important for not me, but the people that needed me at that point in time. I can't be this guy that I am in the Focus a mile outside of Newport when I'm at Ashley and Kathy and Jason's house and Phil's house trying to take care of Phil. And whether you meant to do it or not, or whether it was just instinctual for you, I think, and my opinion in 50 cents won't buy you a warm cup of coffee, but I think you made the right decision by not breaking the record, breaking your record that day, putting up your most, crazy physical achievement that day. I think it's probably one of the best decisions you've ever made, man. I know that sounds weird, but I think it is, because you could tell this story now, and this story would be different if that wasn't the way that it ended.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that, man. And it was also a thing where I needed to focus that day on him, which is wild because it was that night we were even supposed to go out to another friend's birthday party, another guy that you know. And a guy, I called him and I'm like, I'm not coming to your birthday party. And he's like, I know, dude. I know you're not coming. Like, you shouldn't come. And like,
You shouldn't, yeah.
I was just so rattled though, because I was like, well, now I'm letting another friend down because of this is happening. And I was just so in the clouds that I was like about to make a bad decision and show up there. And if I had done that, then I would have just been in a heap anyway. And that would have made things even worse. And so I think it's also, I don't want to turn the whole thing into a big, like anti-drug commercial, but I just think one other takeaway that has to be there, and that is that you are not smarter or stronger than a substance. And it's the same thing with if somebody were to talk you into taking more shots than you wanted to take, and now you're spinning in your bed. Well, that's because you can't just be stronger than everything. And so I think that as we get older and as times change and the drugs change, you can't trust anything anymore. And if you want to get up tomorrow, there is no buzz that's worth it. There are other avenues. There are things that if you need a buzz, there are ones that you wake up from. And I know that seems like a weird mission statement, but I would much rather anybody do anything other than that, because when I buried him, it wasn't but 6 or 7 months after I had just buried another friend of ours. And on the way home, I called Sam to tell him that I loved him and that I cared about him and to be careful. And that fell on deaf ears. And if losing another friend to the exact same thing isn't enough, what is? So just be careful. That's all I'm saying. And I let myself get all emotional, and now my eyes are all beat up.
Hey, man, you can't fault yourself for it, right? It's one thing, you're right. You don't want to turn it into an anti-drug commercial, and I get that, but I don't think there's a better way to go about trying to get this message across to the people that you really care about than to tell these stories. And, my wife got sober a couple years back and has not had a drop of alcohol since. And watching her go through that and hearing some of the stories that are told through the groups that she goes to and the groups that they ask her to come in and speak. And it's what you realize is the reason they want her to come in and speak is because she found her way out. That's a great success story. We got to tell more of those, but we can't forget about the gravity of the other side of that spectrum. And the gravity of the other side of that spectrum is much heavier, okay? And it carries much more weight. And I think that's why it's so important to tell these stories. And nobody wants to relive it again, man. And I think you've done a great job today holding it together. I'm a very emotional person. You know that about me. And even just mentioning the little bit of the story of when my late father-in-law passed, it chokes me up. So I get it, and I think that emotion that you're bringing here, dude, is what is moving the message, which is, you're right, you got to be careful, man. In this day and age, A guy I work with is from Ogden, Utah, and he just told me a story the other day about fentanyl being found in marijuana that was being sold on the streets. Cannabis is legal in Utah. You can get it. You can walk up to a store and get it, and there's fentanyl-laced weed on the streets. I don't know
Go
that
to
I've
the
ever
store.
heard of anything more terrifying than that, Drew. And
Well,
maybe that's just the world we live in now. And so it's important to talk about this stuff.
and I think that's also important is street versus store. And, whether you choose to use these substances or not, the high-end part about a store and whatever they sell in there is it has to pass tests in order to be there. Stuff on the street can be pulled from anywhere and could have anything on it or about it. Now, I don't know. I have always thought that, pot would be something that would be much harder to mask it in than it would a pill where you just bury it and press it and it's done. But if such a tiny amount of fentanyl smoked can kill you, then it could be on there too. So I think it's just about being careful, knowing about where and what it is that you've got and where it's from. And if it is something that could be tested, here's alcohol, perfect example. Alcohol in a store still can be deadly, but it's not going to make you blind off of 2 shots like some moonshine can if it's made wrong. So it's all relative. If you're going to choose to make decisions, just make the safest version of that your decision, and you'll be a lot better off. And when your friends are telling you you're being a jackass or that you're playing with fire, especially if it's a friend who's held the torch themselves, just listen. Just listen to them. And do as many push-ups as you possibly can. Which is not the truth. So here to the tail end, after that 2,800 push-ups, I'm in Whistler, and my buddy, Brian's his name, he said, so you done? You done with the push-ups? I'm like, oh, we'll see. We'll see. And then I got up on New Year's Day, and I was still there. New Year's Day was, well, actually, no. So we leave on New Year's Eve, which is a terrible time to drive back from Canada. So I continued the push-ups all the way through there. It did the final day in Canada. And then when we drove home, that's when I was going to quit it. And then I was like, you know what? I can't quit it. But on the way home, Amy is working with kids' gloves on me because I have been through a traumatizing event. But she's still like, bro, the time that you're taking on this, because you said it earlier, Marcus, it's morning, noon, and night. And you've got kids and a job and a wife. So we made a deal. So that next year I agreed that I would do 2,000 push-ups a day. I cut off 800 in a negotiation over that long drive from Canada back to Oregon. And I did 2,000 push-ups every day for a year. So 1,500, then 2,000,
she put a
then
governor on you.
2,500. Now that I do the math, it was 1,500 push-ups, 2,000, 2,500, 2,800, and then I agreed to go down to 2,200 push-ups. So I had done all these different variations that add up to something like 3 to 4 million push-ups since the pandemic. I agree to the 2,200, and I do the 2,200, but it's during that year that I started, I wouldn't say burning out, but I started realizing that I wanted more. So I decided that I was going to start doing things like pull-ups and riding more of the Peloton and things like that. So I worked all that stuff in as well. And so I finished the 22, and now I have a deal with my wife that I do other workouts, but I will only do 1,000 push-ups a day. And that's the new rule. And I hope for my sanity and everyone else's.
I like how she put a governor on you like you were an old Chevy that, she got in the shop. Like, man, if we keep letting this thing do 140 miles an hour, it's going to hurt one of us. Let's clip it down. Let's have it shut off at 95 miles an hour. That's plenty fast enough, but we're still have some fun in it. We're still going to get what we want out of it, but we're not going to get too dangerous. So, hey, you know what? That's a good woman you got there, man. I've said that ever since you met her, and glad that she was able to get you muted to where it was effective for both of you guys.
So basically, I was regulated, like you said, And now I'm at the 1,000 push-ups every single day. And that's going to be my future. I'm not going back up. My hinges don't want it. I might try and break that push-up record again. We'll see. But I will not do it without the proper plan because damn, that hurt. Marcus, I love you, buddy. I'm glad that you were able to come on and hear all this today.
Hey, man, thank you so much for thinking of me, and thank you for the time here. You know I love you, and I'm so proud of you, not only for the accomplishment, which I know means a lot to you, but I'm proud of you for the way you've been able to hold up in these emotional scenarios, because I know you've had more than one friend succumb, and it's absolutely tragic, but every time you turn it into something that is hopefully positive for the people that are still here and the people that need that positivity. And so keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep banging out the push-ups. And I want you to just test Amy one time. I want you to go into the kitchen with a tape recorder and tell her, I did 2,300 today, and just get that live reaction. Just see what she has to say, okay?
Yeah, I think she's about push-upped out, but you know, you could have a vice that's worse. So I always tell her, I'm addicted to something. At least it's this, right? So, all right, Marcus, thanks for coming on, buddy. And we'll have you on again soon to talk about stuff that's not so surrounding me and my personal accomplishments. Fit for Radio, you got to follow, like, share, tell people about it. We want to keep making these episodes for a long time. And the only way to do it is with you. Thank you to the Stafford Hills Club for having us. And to you, Marcus, for coming on. Love you, bud.